So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, and this next interview brought to you by Mr. Lube. Mr. Lube and Tires, change your oil, change your wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, only for a limited time at Mr. Lube with 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. Funny enough, I went to Mr. Lube, changed my oil and my wipers just a few weeks ago. Guess
missed the event.
I think it's retroactive. I can get the good. Yeah. Anyways, next time. Here he is, the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, and now the former co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast, because John Shannon announced on social this week that he will no longer be participating. And well, nice to see you, Mr. Shannon. Fine work with Bob for the last few years.
Yeah, it's been a thrill. And really, and as both of you guys know, it goes well beyond the 4.5 years we did this way, which was COVID, which started during COVID. But I joined Sportsnet in 2009 and was contractually obligated to Bob's show for a long period of time before we left in 2019. So yeah, it's bittersweet, but guys, it was time. It really was time. We need to do some new things. I still do a lot of media across the country, which I love, in Winnipeg and in Edmonton and obviously in Vancouver. And there'll be other stuff. There'll be other stuff coming, and I'm going to enjoy September for now.
Yeah, well, good on you, and again, well done on a run there with Bob.
You could join us at Young Stars this year if your schedule's opened up so much. You could come back to
beautiful Penticton,
your hometown,
right near Oliver.
Yeah,
the most famous man from Oliver.
I might be somewhere else enjoying my time.
Good on you. Good on you. Summer's not done for John Shannon. You mentioned you do a lot of work in Edmonton and in Winnipeg. We're asking today on our poll question, John, does the West run through Edmonton? Are the Oilers the team to beat in the West?
Well, that's, we're looking for a black and white answer for an answer that's very gray, because I think there are people in Colorado that could argue that, particularly if they're healthy this year and they solve a bit of their goaltending issues. Dallas could argue that. And, I'm not being a homer, but I think Vancouver could argue a little bit of that too. So it's not as simple as saying, okay, Leon signed, big money, Connor's going to be happy, life goes on at Edmonton, and they're going to go to the Stanley Cup final. The West is too tough to pick one team over any other.
Hey, every golfer that tees it up can beat Scotty Scheffler, but Scotty Scheffler's still the golfer to beat in a PGA Tour event. I mean, it's not guaranteeing, but now that they've got that solidified, do they get to now more clearly, more accurately get to make their hockey moves to get their stuff in line? Like, if that's hanging over their head, maybe they're more restricted, and maybe they've got to, keep an ambiguous amount of cap space free in contracts going forward. Does this open up something though for the Oilers? Does it make them better?
Well, I don't know how it could make them better. It's just signing one of their regular guys. But
that's the other argument.
But what I would argue is it will make them different. We have not seen truly the Stan Bowman effect in Edmonton. And I think that it's going to take us a while to understand that, what really influence Stan will have on the construction of that hockey club. I think it's fair to say, rightly or wrongly, and it's very subjective, that he probably has a different philosophy than Kenny Holland had. So that means what? And I don't think any of us understand that yet. We do know that they're going to have a bit of money available. Evander Kane's going on IR. Who knows for how long? Maybe it's the Mark Stone treatment. You never know. And then the signings that occurred on free agency were before Stan was there, with Jeff Jackson running things. Will Jeff Skinner come out of the woodwork and have a good season, even though he's never been to the Stanley Cup playoffs in his career. So there are a few questions to be answered in Edmonton, and a lot of it to me surrounds Stan Bowman's influence on how the team is built.
Well, I'll say this, even if Arvidsson and Skinner pan out for the Oilers, and I think there's a lot of reason to believe that they will, I still think you have a defense problem. Like, I think you're weaker on defense than you were last year. You're looking at Emberson and Brown as your third pair with Nurse and the struggles that he's had. So you better get goaltending, and better goaltending than you did at the beginning of last season if you're Edmonton and thinking of winning the division. That all said, I mean, they may just be all eggs in the playoff basket. And frankly, John, although I hate to say it, I expect Vegas to bounce back here this year.
Oh, so do I.
They sort of fiddled around last year. I would expect a more holistic 1 through 82 effort from
if
the
they're
Golden
healthy.
Knights
Sure, yeah.
The interesting thing about Edmonton is that I don't know if you recall a year ago, Leon and Connor and all those guys were already in Edmonton, and they were already practicing, and they're having one of those captains practices or whatever they're called. Well, none of them are showing up for a while yet. It didn't really help their start last year. And anything can improve if they get off to a better start. But we also know that really it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the Oilers finished well for the most part. So from that perspective, adding Vegas, I think there are 6 teams, to be honest. I think there are 6 teams in the West that could lay claim to being in the Western Conference Final. And last I checked, you can only have 2.
Yeah. So that's Edmonton, Vegas, Vancouver, Colorado, Dallas. Are you a Nashville guy here, John? Is that what I'm
Well,
hearing?
I think Nashville's on the cusp, and I would not rule out the Los Angeles Kings, boys. I would not rule out the LA Kings still. They're going to be a better hockey club. The Jim Hiller's going to have a little more influence. They got rid of the Pierre-Luc Dubois contract, which was a huge bust. And Rob Blake's under a ton of pressure for that team to perform. So now with mentioning LA and Nashville, now we're up to 7.
Yeah.
And we haven't mentioned St. Louis. And we know that Torrey Krug's now on LTIR for the year. That gives Doug Armstrong a lot more cap space to play. And knowing Doug as I do, he's pouring through everybody's contract saying, is there another offer sheet that I can make?
Oh,
wow.
I'm not,
still some RFAs out there.
That is me being totally, sarcastic about Doug. I love Doug, but, Doug is trying to rebuild the St. Louis Blues, and he's doing it the best way he can, and he will do it every way he can.
Well, he's got trade space.
I was going to say, Mike, clip it, Shannon, : Blues will attempt another offer.
Yes.
Right.
We were talking about the salary cap going up earlier, and where do you think this Leon contract puts Connor McDavid? Right? What are we talking about? After watching NBA salaries reach these, and they're not going to be approaching NBA salaries, but I'm saying we have to come to terms with the fact that they are going to make a jump, maybe not to the level of a left-handed pitcher or a 3-point shooter like Steph Curry. But what is Connor McDavid going to make, given we're expecting another jump of maybe $4 to $5 million for the following season?
Well, you're right, Blake. And so by the time Connor's new contract kicks in, there'll probably be $10 million more in the pie for a team.
Right. So we're talking percentage of salary cap for a team. Boy, that number gets big now, doesn't it?
It does. But at the same time, when you I think Connor's going to be 15 or north. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you have to have the conversation with Connor, and hopefully they had the same one with Leon, saying, guys, if we give you all the money, we got no money to put the rest of the team on, and you're only playing 23 minutes. Mm-hmm. So who are we going to put out there for 37 minutes? Who are we going to put out there if we expect to win? And that's the real challenge of, and you're right. I mean, the NFL cap just keeps going up exponentially. The NBA cap is going to explode next year. The NHL cap is going to go up gradually. I don't see an explosion of $15 million in the next 2 years. You just don't. It's going to increase. But remember, before the pandemic, guys, we talked about at this point in 2024, 2025, we were going to have a $100 million cap. We were going to have that, which is why guys got signed to big deals prior to the pandemic. That's why the Leafs did what they did, because they assumed the cap would continue to grow, and it didn't for a long time. It flattened. So that becomes the real challenge. And the revenues are going to improve in the NHL, but they're not going to improve that you're going to see a giant jump. So you have to find a way to pay the rest of the players on your team. And don't forget, Evan Bouchard needs a new contract soon. Evan Bouchard, you know, they weren't going to pay Evan Bouchard what they said they weren't going to pay to Broberg. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's not just the Oilers having the challenge. Every team that pays to the cap has that challenge, and that's not going to go away for a long, long time.
But not every team has two of the top 5 players in the world on their team.
No,
that's the challenge for them.
Okay, so the last time one team did have 2 of the top 5 players in the National Hockey League, it was Chicago.
Chicago or Penguins?
I would say pick either one.
Yeah. Either scenario.
But I also know who the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks was.
Right, that's true. He knows how to stick handle that.
And no one knows how to manage this, in my opinion, better than Stan Bowman. You know, you look at track records for the last 15 years. If you said, I want a guy that can manage stars, keep the core, and work everything around it, who are you going to hire? Well, hey, Stan Bowman's as good as any of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you make a good point, John, in that, you know, Edmonton, even after the Draisaitl contract, needs to do something with Bouchard. Now, granted, he's an RFA. Blake makes a good point about it being 2 years down the road for Connor McDavid. Plus, they got a lot of guys on expiring deals. Vegas has got to re-sign Theodore, who's UFA after this year. So, you know, it may well be, when just looking at core, not to mention their goaltender to Vegas, when just looking at cores, the Canucks can feel pretty good that they got their core for at least the next 2 years with Demko, Hughes, Pettersson, Miller, which brings me to goaltending, John, and Canucks goaltending. Much has happened since we last talked to you. How worried, how concerned would you be if you were with the Canucks or a Canucks fan about what you're hearing on Thatcher Demko and Arturs Shelovs?
Well, with respect to Shelovs, I'm not worried. You know, I mean, he's not going to be the second coming of Carey Price. He's not. He's in the system there. He's the backup goalie. I think we can find backup goalies. So is he good? Yeah, he's good. Is he a folk hero in Vancouver right now? Yeah, he is. That's part of his magic. I think that the key question in the Demko one isn't about coaching as much as it is, are we going to go through this every year, once in a while, with Thatcher Demko's health? Is he going to be, fragile every year? Not because he wants to be, but because he throws his body into the play and into the position so much that he hurts himself. That would be the biggest concern that I think that's having huge conversations in the office. What have we got with Demko, and how do we keep him healthy?
Do you think their season hinges on Demko?
Yes, I think it does. He's a top flight goaltender. And he has to play, in my mind, for this team to be successful, 55 regular season games and every playoff game. Every playoff game. So, we talk about the regular season being 82 exhibition games. He has to be there so they can get into the playoffs, and then he has to be there to be a difference maker in the playoffs. Well, let me ask you two guys. Demko is healthy for the whole playoffs. Are we talking about the Edmonton Oilers being in the Stanley Cup final?
I don't.
Past playoffs or the
this past
next
playoffs?
spring?
This past playoffs. I don't think
the past playoffs.
I think he makes a big enough difference in that Oilers series.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, there were some goals from distance on Shelovs that I think that Thatcher Demko stops. Now, Shelovs also made some other incredible saves. Put it this way, I still think Dallas is a major hurdle for the Canucks if they happen to get through Edmonton.
His point was about Edmonton, though. Do they get past Edmonton?
Yeah,
you get through Edmonton, you can beat Dallas
potentially.
Sure,
but But he buys him another round at the very least. I think he
Wow.
probably does.
Another round at about
Yeah.
$5 to $6 million at home game. Oh my God.
Mhm.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it was a fun ride at 2 rounds.
What
I know, and you know what? It is just, not to change the topic completely, but isn't it just thrilling to be talking about Canadian teams succeeding in the Stanley Cup playoffs and how much fun it brought all of us? How much
No
fun
doubt.
it was?
No
God,
doubt.
we need more.
No, I know, and with respect to our friends in the United States, it just means more here. It's just cultural.
Sure.
It is, a rhythm of life that either cheers up the days or
Way more vibes.
yeah,
Way
absolutely.
more.
What do you make of what's going on here with Ian Clark and the goaltending coaching change?
Well, from a distance, and I must admit, it from a distance, I read everything and hear everything and talk to a few people. Perhaps Ian overplayed his hand. I think Ian thought he was that important to the organization. He has a great relationship with Demko. We know that. And we see other organizations change their goaltending system of who runs things. Benoit Allaire in New York, Mitch Kornback in Nashville. There seems to be now a hierarchy in the goaltending departments around the NHL, and I assume Ian thought that he could create that in Vancouver, and it certainly sounds like there was pushback. And whether it was Rutherford or Alvin, they said, "Well, no, we don't want to do that. If you're going to do that, you're still under contract, and then we're going to make you a scout. But if you're not going to go on the ice, and we totally respect why you don't want to go on the ice because of your knees." I would say that there's just been a difference in opinion on how to manage the goaltending department.
Do you think he's wearing the injuries? Do you think he's wearing the goaltender injuries that have cropped up?
I don't know how you can. I don't know how you can. I mean, that's
it would be theoretical at most, right? You can't prove it. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, if it was an owner running down the hallway and yelling at him because the goalie was injured, that's one thing, because owners don't know as much as other people. But it's not. Rutherford understands that. He played the position. Alvin understands that. Right. I mean, those guys understand all that.
Although Jim never played a reverse VH, so he doesn't know the pain of that.
Well, I'm not. I'm old enough to remember when I was in the arena when Jimmy played. So I'm not sure he ever went down on his knees.
Yes,
Hey, whether it was She Loves in a really tough spot this past spring, whether it was the development of Thatcher Demko, Jacob Markstrom before him. I mean, Ian's got quite a track record in Vancouver, and that's not even touching all the stuff he did in Columbus, which needless to say was outstanding work. Is this wise on the Canucks part? If in fact Clark overplayed his hand and they said, no, if that's the case, you're just going to be a scout. Is this a wise move from the Canucks?
I think it's too early to answer that. I mean, you know what? Just because one announcement was made one day doesn't mean things can't change another. Matt, I'm not dodging the question. I just think it's too early to say, okay, it's cut and dry. This is the way it is. Ian Clark's still part of the organization. He still has valuable information, and he still can be a resource. So it's not as if he's been sent to Robidas Island. He's still there, and he's still a resource.
Moving on here, John, your thoughts and memories of Johnny Gaudreau, and what have you made of the outpouring for him and his brother Matthew since the terrible events of last week?
Well, this isn't a hockey story. They just happen to play hockey. This is a tragic family story. The outpouring of what the Gaudreau family are like, what Johnny and Matthew were both like as people, the timing of it, being groomsmen in their sister's wedding the following day, supposedly, Matthew's wife being pregnant. I don't think you can write any more tragic storylines if you were writing a movie. This is
The details make it worse and worse, don't they? Like,
every
yeah.
day, every day. You know, and here's and we I think we all learned how much people loved Johnny Gaudreau. I think we did. I mean, look at the outpouring in Calgary where he left, but the fan base has rallied to show support. To change the topic a little bit, here, you know, we have to find a way to fix drunk driving. We have to find a way to get this out of our society. You know, the sad thing is that yes, 2 hockey players, one prolific, were killed by a drunk driver allegedly on Thursday night. I can tell you right now, you know as well as I do, that wasn't the first drunk driver killed this weekend on Labor Day weekend. You know that. You know there were more. How do we fix that? How do we stop people from getting in cars after drinking? How stupid do we have to be to get in a car after you drink? How stupid. And by the way, guys, mea culpa. We've all done it. We've all had a glass of wine or a beer and say, well, I've only had a glass of wine. I forgot the beer, and get in my car and drive home. Well, I won't. I tell you right now, I will not do it again. I will not do it again. And I hope that there's enough people out there that will say, we have to fix this. You know, it's sorry to get on a soapbox, but it's like gun control.
Yeah.
You know, we react to situations of shootings. Well, we better react to this one because this one's fixable. This isn't in the United States Constitution. Yeah. This one is just plain stupid.
If I'm not mistaken, there are, after someone has been convicted of drunk driving, as they go through the process of getting their license back, my understanding is there is like a breathalyzer that you can install on the car to make sure that the car doesn't engage unless someone is below the legal limit. David Alter has proposed renaming the Lady Byng after Johnny Gaudreau. It was the only major NHL award that he won, and this year's actually the 100-year anniversary of the trophy. And let's face it, John, the award has a bit of an image problem that maybe if you renamed it the Johnny Gaudreau, it would be more desirable and be less draw less derision from hockey fans and media.
Well,
and players.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, if they're if they're going to rename one trophy, they better rename them all. You know, that to me is a discussion for another time. Yeah. You know, the one thing is that we always worry that, you know, the hockey world is so insular and small. You can tell by coverage this weekend that Johnny Gaudreau made a huge impact on a lot of people.
Yeah.
In a lot of cities, you know, whether it was in Jersey, whether it was in Boston, where he went to school, obviously Calgary and now Columbus. So from that perspective, you know, the sadness does not compensate for it, but hopefully the family can take solace in that they raised 2 young, tremendously professional gentlemen.
Who were adored widely, as we learned. John, thank you very much for this. Once again, well done with Bob for all those years, and we will catch up here soon.
Cheers, boys.